Did you know that 7 out of 10 Americans who have medical bills say that they have to lower their spending on food in order to avoid a medical bankruptcy? Navigating our highly complex world of healthcare and health benefits leaves many people feeling like a snowball in, well, you know where. I'm Josh Butler, healthcare consultant and advisor to more than 150 employers around the country, and this is A Snowball's Chance in Healthcare, a show about restoring hope in healthcare. Join us as we discuss ways you can lower your healthcare and benefits costs, how companies are winning the healthcare and benefits battle, and how hope is being restored to this community and communities across the country. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of A Snowball's Chance in Healthcare. I'm your host, Josh Butler, president of Butler Benefits and Consulting here in Amarillo, Texas. We are a healthcare benefits brokerage and consulting firm, and we're focused on strategies that restore hope in healthcare. And each and every week here on this program, I'm sharing valuable information. I'm interviewing industry experts and doctors, employers, and even other nationally recognized consultants from around the country to give people important information about the healthcare industry, about the benefits industry. There's so much that people don't know about these two industries, and information that give organizations and their employees a snowball's chance in healthcare. Now, I want to start out today, and I want to talk, and I just want to just say, I've never met a client. I don't have a client. I've never met a company who said, Josh, here's what I'd really like to do next year. I'd really like to pay a heck of a lot more for my health insurance this coming year, okay? I've never had an employer group say to me, now, Josh, what we'd really like to offer next year are far less valuable health insurance benefits to our employees, okay? I've never heard anybody say, I want a plan so bad, so invaluable that my employees are never going to want to use it, right? Nobody ever says that. No one's ever said that to me in my entire career. And this is the antithesis of what actually employers and employees actually want. It's the opposite of what employees want, right? People want to see their premiums go down each and every year, or they want to see at least let's start to level off. They also want to see their deductibles come back into a more manageable range, and they want to see them go down, not up, right? And I think this is what's fueling and feeding a whole lot of people's frustration in our industry, is that when it comes to health insurance and employee benefits in general, is they're getting it at both ends of the spectrum. Year over year over year, they're watching those premiums climb and premiums go up, and that's one thing, and that's frustrating in and of itself. But the vast majority of the time, those same people or these same people and same organizations are also seeing their deductibles increase, their out-of-pocket limits increase, their copay amounts increase, their co-insurance amounts increases, their networks are shrinking, right? And people are getting it from both ends of the spectrum, higher premiums and things like higher deductibles and out-of-pockets. And because of that, we see this phenomena that's going on and that has been going on in employee benefits for quite some time. And what I'm talking about is this mass exodus over into what are called high-deductible health plans, or HDHPs, or some may call them consumer-driven health plans. That's just a nicer name for a high-deductible health plans. And because of this phenomena, insurance companies are continuing to develop, and they've developed different products. And you guys see me here on video when you watch the podcast. I use air quotes to say insurance companies are designing these products to try to help people address these massive deductibles. Now, insurance also designed these products, right? And then they get agents and brokers to go out there and market these products and to sell these products. And I make no mistake, folks, these are products being sold, and we're going to talk more about that today. Today, we're going to talk about these products, and they're called medical gap plans, okay? Gap plans. It's something it's trending again, where we're seeing premium increases and higher and higher deductibles. This shift and migration over into the utilization of these gap plans has become pretty popular and pretty prevalent. And today, I'm not just going to talk about the product itself. I want to talk about the product a little bit, the gap plan itself. But I'm going to address a very common strategy strategy that I encounter in the marketplace, and I see agents and brokers and people out there that are using this strategy. And let me be real clear, it's a strategy, it's a very specific strategy to sell more product. To sell more product. It's not a strategy to solve a problem. It's a temporary strategy, and brokers gain from it because these gap plans carry premiums and brokers make commissions off sales of products. And we're going to talk about that. But first, I've already identified that the problem that these gap plans are trying to solve for, right? Rising premiums and rising in conjunction with rising deductibles. That's the problem that these gap plans are being sold to solve for, right? And but we're going to talk some more about solutions today. But I just want to remind everybody that these are the problems that these gap plans are supposedly trying to solve for. That's first. Now, second, I want to spend a second just to talk about these products themselves, just the actual product, the gap plan itself. What is it? How does it work? What is a gap plan? Okay. So I'm going to give you a real basic, high-level, basic-level definition of what a gap plan is. It's basically a form of a supplemental plan or a supplemental policy that helps people cover out-of-pocket expenses, things like their deductibles. It's primarily used to help people cover a portion of, or perhaps even all, of their primary health insurance deductible. Okay, so it's just a gap plan. It's a very, and that's a very basic definition at its very simplest form. And when we just describe the product that way, it seems like a valuable product, right? And for some people, they are valuable products. I want to be real clear. For some people, they are valuable products. The product itself is designed to help limit the financial risk, the financial exposure that a person has, that the policyholder has. And in many instances, I've seen they've worked. They've worked great. Okay. So, for example, let's take a person, an individual person, and that's the key element here. And I'm going to circle back to this point a little bit later when we compare. Okay. But when an individual purchases a gap plan, they have the ability to assess their individual risk for next year. And they're likely, if people that want to participate with a gap policy or a product like this, they're doing so because they already know that they face an upcoming future medical expense where the gap plan would prove valuable to them, right? They know that they're going to meet their deductible next year. So like, let's say there's a family that's expecting a baby in the coming year, right? That's a known risk. You know the baby's coming in 9 months. So a family can assess and evaluate a gap plan and get it in place to offset a portion of their deductible because they know that at least mom is probably going to satisfy the deductible in the coming year, right? It's simple, right? The gap plan is going to most likely be a good value for that family in that coming year, okay? And how do you discern value in a gap plan? It's really simple. It's really simple math. You take the monthly premium of what you're going to pay for the gap policy, and you multiply it by 12 months to get to an annualized premium, okay? Then you just simply compare it to what the benefit level is. What is that plan going to pay out if I need to utilize it in the upcoming year? So if your premium's $100, that's $1,200 of annualized premium. And if the policy will pay a $2,000 benefit to offset your deductible, then great. When mom goes and delivers and she satisfies her deductible, or at whatever point she satisfies the deductible, that family in that first year is going to realize a net gain, a financial net gain of $800. Okay, this is simple math and it's smart money, right? Yes, in a situation like this, and everybody follows this. I don't have a problem with utilization of gap plans in this way for individuals. And when gap plans are used in this way, they typically work fine and they provide a monetary value to the policyholders, okay? The issue I have with gap plans is not in the product itself. The issue that I have and that employers need to be aware of is not the product itself, but here's what they need to be cautious of. It's this seemingly smart strategy behind getting employers, not individuals, but getting employers to pay for these gap plans and these products. So a couple of weeks ago, I published a blog, and many of you follow my blog, and I appreciate that. And it sparked a rather lively debate among some of my colleagues and some people that work in our industry on this topic of gap plans in general. And the title of my blog was Beware of Brokers Bearing Gap Plans. Okay, beware of brokers bearing gap plans. And several people came forward and shared stories and instances of where they've utilized gap plans and they've worked great. Kind of like the analogy I just used with the pregnant mom and the family. That's great. I mean, and I'm not challenging those stories at the individual level. And I do believe that they can help some people. And once again, I'll reiterate, I'm not opposed to the plans themselves, and I made that also clear in my blog. But what I am opposed to are brokers and agents that go out and they sell plans under a certain strategy at the employer level. At the employer level. Not at the individual voluntary level, but at the employer-funded level. And so I'm going to walk you through a scenario of typically how this conversation goes. It goes something like this. Hey, Mrs. Employer, you guys are listening out there, you employers. I say your health plan is very rich. You have a very rich health insurance policy, and it has a $2,000 deductible. That's great. Employees love it. They got rich benefits. Good. Cadillac plan, whatever. But this next year, we just got your renewal, and your rates are going to go up 30%. You're getting a 30% increase at renewal on your premiums. Man, that's horrible news. No broker ever wants to deliver that news to a client. It stinks. It's been a bad claims year, and listen, claims are the claims. It is what it is. There ain't much you can do about it. Yada yada yada. Okay? But listen, we can get that 30% increase down to like maybe single digits even, maybe a 9 or 10% increase, right? And so stop right there. I'm going to pause for a second. Right there. From an employer's perspective, remember what I said at the top. Even employers, they don't want to intentionally raise their deductibles on their employees, and I can assure you, employees darn sure don't want their deductibles raised, right? So right here should be the first red flag, the first indicator for the employer. But he's cautiously listening, and the conversation continues to something like this. So we can get your 30% increase down to, let's say, 10, but we need to raise your $2,000 deductible to $5,000. We need to more than double it next year. And when you do that, and now your 30% renewal goes to 10%. Now, that's something that gets the employer's attention right there. Listen, a 30% increase reduced down to a 10% increase, that gets the employer's attention because they start to think dollars. A 30% increase represents, let's say, a $30,000 increase for my organization next year. And I can't tolerate that. But a 10% increase would just cost us an additional $10,000 next year. Now, listen, I can manage a $10,000 increase next year, but I can't manage a $30,000 increase. So now you're starting to get that employer on the hook, right? And so the conversation continues, and the employer says, tell me a little bit more. Well, we raise your $2,000 deductible to $5,000, and then here's what we do. We turn around and we purchase this shiny gap plan on everybody. We're going to do this to everybody because, after all, Mr. and Mrs. Employer, it's your employees are not going to appreciate going from a $2,000 deductible to a $5,000 deductible. And so this gap plan is going to pay a benefit, a $3,000 benefit for every employee that exceeds the first $2,000. So here's how the gap plan works. Employee pays the first $2,000 of the deductible. The gap plan covers the back $3,000 of the $5,000 deductible, right? That's how the gap plan works. And for many people right here, this is where the conversation stops. This is where the conversation with the employer, between the employer and the broker and the agent, or whoever is selling the gap plan to the employer, this is where the conversation stops. And it doesn't need to stop right here. And it seems like a brilliant strategy. The employer saves premium. The employee keeps a $2,000 deductible level. It's a win-win, right? Well, it's a win-win in theory, because in reality, folks, I've never seen this scenario play out to where it advantaged the employer, okay? And But a lot of people say, well, yeah, we're going to buy this gap plan on everybody. And that seems fair, right? If you're going to do this for one, you've got to do it for all. And besides, we can't really predict next year who's going to hit their deductible and who's not, right? Can't really predict that. So the story goes. And that's where the story ends for a lot of situations. But I want to break this down a little bit further. Number one, raising the deductible on your health plan from $2,000 to $5,000, it's certainly going to reduce your premiums. It's certainly going to give you a premium reduction, no doubt about it. Now, you're not going to get as much discount as you used to do this, but you're certainly going to have a reduction in premium. That's number one. But number two, there is a very crucial piece of information that's missing from the scenario that I described before, okay? And what is it? Some of you already know where I'm going, because you're a strategic thinker, or maybe you work in this industry. The strategy of getting the employer to pay 100% of the gap plan on 100% of the employee population to offset the $5,000 deductible. So what's the information that's missing? What should the employer be asking next? How many employees are going to hit their deductible next year? Well, you can't predict it. Yeah. You can't really predict it. You can't predict the future. But here, I'll make a prediction right now. I can predict right now that 100% of an employer's population is not going to hit a deductible next year. You're not going to have 100% of your employee population satisfy 100% of their deductible. And if you can't predict the future, you can certainly find out how many met their deductible this year and last year and perhaps even the year before. You can work with experts that do this type of analysis for employers. Heck, like I said, I'll make the prediction right now. 100% of your employees are not going to hit their deductible next year. So I'll tell you a quick story. A couple years ago, I consulted a company. They had about 120 employees on their health plan, and they were still fully insured at the time. But they're large enough here in Texas in the mid-market. Groups can access claims reports, and they're pretty detailed. They're good, and you can extract a lot of information from them. So we requested that they give us their data, and so they did, and they shared it with us to do this analysis. And they're one of these groups that had deployed this strategy. Okay, this raise your deductible up really high, and buy it back down with the gap plan. Okay, and so the organization, when we tallied up the premium, they were spending approximately, it was right at $100,000. It was like $98,000 a year that the organization was spending in gap premium to cover all 120 employees on this gap plan. Okay, that washed out to about $70 a month per employee. And so the gap plan was designed to offset $3,000 of a $5,000 deductible, just like we used in our example earlier. And so the company did get a premium decrease that next year of about $150,000. So moving from a $2,000 deductible up to $5,000, and then they got some premium relief. It was about $150,000. But when I went back for the analysis meeting, I asked the CEO, and I said, yeah, this is great strategy, and I really applaud you for recognizing your people don't like or can't really afford $5,000 deductibles. I commend you for deploying this strategy. But here's my question. How many people exceeded $2,000 of their deductible this past year? And so how much did your gap policy pay out? And he just kind of stared at me for a couple of, it seemed like forever, but he stared at me a little bit. And he just said, I don't know. Now remember, I told you that this group had shared with us their claims and utilization data, their reporting. And so for us, it was a rhetorical question. We already knew the answer to that question. And here's how their figures shaked out, ladies and gentlemen. The figure was this. They only had 8 people out of about 120. 8 people fully met their $5,000 deductible in that current plan year. Okay, and about a dozen more people had expenses between $2,000 and $5,000. The vast majority of people in the organization had less than $2,000 of medical expenses for the year. Okay, so when it all shook out, the gap plan paid out a total benefit to employees in that organization of $37,000. $37,000. Okay? Interpretation. The employer just paid $98,000 in premium to insure $37,000 of realized risk. Realized risk. That was his realized losses, or the Gap plan's realized losses for that plan year. $98,000 in premium versus $37,000 of payments. Had the employer assumed that risk himself, he would have paid out $37,000 to do the same thing. If he could have made the same deal with his employees, hey, if you exceed $2,000, we'll pay the back $3,000. He would have paid out $37,000 versus $98,000 in premium. Okay? So the issue is here, he didn't have the right strategy, and he didn't have the right vehicle for his strategy. He needed a different vehicle other than a gap policy to realize this type of savings, right? And what is that vehicle? Well, if you guys tune in next week, we'll let you know. I'm just kidding, ladies and gentlemen. We don't do that on this program. We don't do that. We share actual strategies and solutions on this show, folks. The employer needed what is called a MERP, M-E-R-P, which stands for a Medical Expense Reimbursement Program. Things like flexible spending accounts and HRAs, health reimbursement arrangements, these are all forms of MERPs. And guess what, folks? MERPs don't come with monthly premiums. You can pay a minimal fee to set up a plan doc, and you have a tax-sheltered vehicle to do exactly what the GAP plan is designed to do, reimburse employees for medical expenses like the back $3,000 of a $5,000 deductible. An employer can do that through a MERP, and you don't have to pay premium on a MERP, okay? They could have used that, set up a MERP, and just paid the $37,000. But what else is missing from the equation? The data, the information. It's virtually impossible, ladies and gentlemen, to implement sound strategies without data. It's like, I've said this 100 times on this program, it's like trying to establish your household budget, but you never get to look at your utility bills. You don't even know what you're paying for water and gas and electricity. You don't know what your mortgage payment is. You need to get the data, okay? Now, not all companies can get claims data. I'm fully aware of that. I live in God's country in the great state of Texas. In this state, employers, you have access to this data, okay? So, guys, this is my issue with GAP plans. It's not the policy themselves. But listen, employers, HR managers, listen up. There are more sophisticated ways to deploy this very same strategy of offsetting your high deductibles. You just have to demand that your agents and your brokers go out there and get you the data before you make a decision. HRAs are a great vehicle. They're very versatile to use for this strategy. But you have to get educated, folks. You have to hold your brokers accountable. You have to hold your consultants and your agents accountable. That, are you here just to sell me a product that yields broker commissions? Are you here to help me solve a problem, which is, how do I start to reduce my premium and offset these high deductibles? There are more sophisticated ways to do it than just purchasing more insurance, ladies and gentlemen. And that's my issue with GAP plans. It ain't the GAP plans themselves. It's the strategies that are being used behind it to get employers to fund them 100% for 100% of their people, when only naturally 10 to 20% of an employer's population is going to hit that deductible in any given year. Okay? And that's what we're talking about today. Well, I hope this has been insightful. I hope that nobody misinterprets my beware of brokers bearing GAP plans out there. If you want to have more information about HRAs or MERPs, feel free to reach out to us. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Shoot me an email. Get on our website. We got a lot of information at butler-benefits.com. But that's going to do it for this week's episode, ladies and gentlemen. It was election week. I hope everybody got out there and exercised their fundamental right to vote. It didn't turn out to be a big Republican sweep. But it was an interesting election, and there's still some people out there that are got to do some runoff elections and everything. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you tune in next week. We're going to be sharing more information, more strategies, and more solutions to give you a snowball's chance in healthcare. God bless, and enjoy the rest of your week.